Christmas time. From a monetary point of view, this is the time when retailers often see their financials move solidly into the black. And it's a time for jolly shopping trips for consumers. Not. Consumers are often cranky, and when they finally get to talk to someone in customer service, it's an adventure in English as a never learned language, just helping to ramp up the rage. What an opportunity, says Janelle Barlow, a consultant and author who translates research into practical tools to improve customer service and complaint handling. Complaints as an opportunity? What a concept! In this edition of Bizgnus Interviews, Ms. Barlow explains. Well, by golly, the last time I complained about something, nobody listened to me. But you're saying companies ought to rethink that and
Ooh,
take complaints as a gift. What do
yeah.
you mean?
Well, there's a lot that can be had from complaining customers. First of all, you can learn what customers want. That's real obvious. And I have to say this too, because this is what a lot of people don't think about, is that if somebody says to you, why aren't you open after 8 o'clock at night? That's a complaint. But many companies will hear it as oh, that was just a question. No, it wasn't. It was a complaint. They want you open later than 8 o'clock. So complaints come in all different forms. But primarily, what we can do is we can learn from them. It also helps you identify loyal customers because loyal customers are the ones who are most likely to complain. If we don't like something, we just walk away. But if we want that company to get better because we want to continue doing business with them, which is really a definition of loyalty, then you should listen to those complaints. They tell us they're the least expensive marketing tool around. I mean, you can do focus groups, you can do advertising, you can do marketing, but with complaints, the customers will just show up and tell you what's going on. Those are some of the major reasons why complaints are gifts. There's a couple more as well, but that pretty well summarizes why it is that we really need to be listening to customers complain.
And there are different types of customers for every manager, not just the customer who walks in off the street to buy the donut or whatever it might be, but also your customers as a manager are your staff, correct?
Absolutely, the internal customers. And sometimes they are more important than the external customers. They certainly cost a lot more to get. I mean, try hiring somebody, try hiring a good one. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into it. It's sometimes easier to put out a flyer and get customers to come into your establishment. So, yes, they need to be taken care of.
So when you go to somebody as the consultant, you're being brought in, they know there's a problem. How difficult is it to get the management to understand how to rethink the world of complaints?
Well, I talk about some myths that are involved with complaint handling. One of them is that many managers think if somebody's an adult that they already know how to handle complaints, and that is just so far from the truth. An awful lot of people who come in and work in places are young, and their whole complaint education has been with their brothers and sisters, and all they did was fight with each other, and they get indignant when somebody says certain things to them. So they don't automatically know what's the right thing to do. That's a big myth. And I want to tell you one more, Doug, and that is that many managers will say to me, I can't tell you how many heads of corporations have said to me, I like your idea of a complaint as a gift, but frankly, we don't want any more complaints. And then I say, how do you think you're going to manage that? And they say, well, we won't make any mistakes. And I say, how do you think you're going to manage that? This is the planet Earth where we have lots of mistakes. And I remember once talking with the head of a hotel, and he said, we don't want any complaints. I said, let me just give you one example. I said, take your swimming pool. Is the water always the right temperature for the people who are swimming in it? And of course, it's not. Now, I'm an avid long distance swimmer and I like cold water, colder anyway. But people in the hotel are probably, when they say, let's go take a swim, what they really mean is, let's go stand down in the swimming pool and talk. That's really what they mean. Now, you want different kinds of temperature depending on your activity. You can never get that right because you can't increase the temperature or decrease the temperature on a on a moment. So what you have to do is to teach your staff how to answer the question, why is your swimming pool so cold? Or can't you do something about the temperature in the pool? You have to work out what's the right answer so that the customers are still satisfied. Managers make a lot of mistakes with how they handle complaints, how they tell their staff to handle complaints. Once I worked with a group, and the man said, I know exactly what you mean about telling your staff you don't want any complaints. He said, if you tell your staff that you don't want to hear any complaints, that's what will happen. Now, that doesn't mean that the complaints aren't coming in. It just means that the staff are not going to tell you about them. Oh, that wasn't a complaint. That was a compliment. That was a question. That was a what if,
But I can imagine managers saying, well, they're testing my authority. They're here to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really do think a lot of people want to get it perfect, but you have to give up on that. You really do. I don't know any family. I don't know any business. I don't know any relationship that is perfect. I just do not know perfection. And I see situations all around me where it would be appropriate to complain. And if the organization listened to that, it's a clue as to how they need to work with their staff to teach them to handle these situations. Or, it could very well be that the kind of complaint that you don't want to hear is, I am tired of us not giving receipts to our customers. And we've got this sign that says, if you don't get a receipt, you can come back and whatever, people have signs like that. So the staff need to know certain things. And when they make mistakes, they need to know how to get around them. I mean, how to get through them to get to the customers. Because frankly, most customers are not satisfied when they complain. They're not. And that's a big loss of customers. Not only did you lose them with whatever problem there was, but you lost them then because you didn't handle it well.
There is a real rage on for artificial intelligence to do so much stuff, including handling a lot of customer complaints. I can't tell you how many times we've tried to reach a human at certain companies that shall remain nameless in this podcast.
I'm on one of them right now.
So what about having some sort of sophisticated software that ought to cut down and speed things up, wouldn't it?
Well, it probably would speed things up, but what you may end up doing is losing customers that way. Yeah, it ends up taking a lot of time. I mean, I know what you're talking about, the anger, the irritation, the rage. And then they say, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience that you just waited for 3 hours to talk with me. I mean, that was not an inconvenience. That was my whole day practically. So yeah, it's, I don't see that those robocalls can ever, I've never had one that asked me the exact question that needed to be asked. Never, ever.
Now, what about having your complaint staff, those who handle customers by phone or primarily by phone, sticking strictly to a script? I can think of a certain internet company where if you have a problem with their internet service and you reach a human, which is quite an accomplishment, in another country, they stick strictly to the script.
That's right. They do. And it's irritating because you can tell, and I personally have a lot of sympathy for those people in the Philippines. That's where a lot of them are. I really do have a lot of sympathy for them. And then especially when I can hear that they're on a complaint. Right now, there's a few words the script. Right now, there's a few words that companies use. One of them is perfect. You say, okay, and what is your address? And I give them my address, and then they say, perfect. I say, what do you mean perfect? It's my address. It's not perfect, it's an address. Or they will, there's another one, absolutely, that's another word that they use. And you can tell because you talk with 3 or 4 people in the company and they all are using the same word. That's scripted as well. But one of the common mistakes with scripting is that customers will say, I'm sorry. You tell them what's bothering you and they say, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, how do you, what do you know about this? I'm sorry too. I'm sorry that it happened, but you're not really sorry. I haven't even told you really the depth of my irritation with your company, and you're sorry already. There's a lot of this that just puts people off. And why would you want to start a complaint handling situation where your customer you're at risk of losing that customer? You're at risk. Why would you want to do anything to further alienate that customer? Why would you want to do that? As I said earlier, most of us learned our complaint handling from our brothers and sisters. Mama, he called me this. Well, you smack him, or you don't touch him, or you whatever. And young people who get into these jobs, it takes them a while to learn that doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. Now, can I just say this? I've developed, or in the process right now of finishing it up, a full complaint handling program for people who do this kind of work. And it's got a lot of elements in it. For example, listening. That's an important complaint handling process. I just want to tell me what happened, Doug. I want to know. Okay, that's listening. And then I better be able to repeat it back too. So I'm really listening. And then there is the ability to read body language, if you can see the body language, or to listen to the words and understand what's being said. So there's a number of these kinds of skill sets that we learn in other ways. But what I'm trying to do is to take all of those skill sets and tie them back to this very special call that's a complaint call, because those are special calls. Everybody's a little nervous, the person who's complaining and the person who's receiving the call. They just as soon you get off the telephone quickly.
Well, are you putting this into a new book or into something else?
I'm arranging it so it's an online program. So like human resource directors can just buy it for their team and not have to take people away. They can do it at times that are convenient for them. And then I'm also developing one, train the trainers, so that in larger corporations, they can have somebody be the trainer for this process inside the company, or they can do it as an independent. I'm trying to reach as many bases as I can. Doug, this book, my Complaint is a Gift book, this book, the one that looks like this, this one is the 3rd edition of the book. So this is the first time that I've gone into what additional materials might organizations need. Incidentally, you know what colors these are?
Looks like yellow and blue.
Yeah.
And
well,
white.
They're the Ukrainian flag colors.
Oh, that's of course right. Yes.
Yeah. And I chose them intentionally as a little honor to the Ukrainians, but also because I think at some level we subconsciously look at that, and we've seen so many of those yellow and blue flags coming out of Ukraine and the terrible issues that they're having there. It creates a certain pull, emotional pull. And that's what complaint handling is all about. It's very, very emotional.
You should send one of those books to Vladimir Putin. It might do some good.
Well, the first 2 editions were printed in Russian. And I think he did get a copy of them, because I worked with one of their banks there that was 51% owned by the government, which means Putin. And it's actually a great bank, but they still needed some help getting around that Russian culture of, why are you complaining? The goods are here. They're so used to not having the products that they've wanted that they tend to be pretty nice about their complaints. But this bank wanted to hear from their customers, and they made a big change. It was all over Russia. Yeah. Yeah.
That must have been like a seismic jolt, to say the least.
It was a seismic joke, and for me, it was as well. The Russians were very receptive to this idea, because I think that there were so many natural I don't know why I want to call them capitalists, but free market things that we do to keep our customers that they really didn't know about. You know, right after the Berlin Wall fell, I did a program in Poland, and I remember one of the women raised her hand and she said, "Well, can't we do anything to make the customers better complainers?" And the rest of the group were mostly young, so they grew up in this, but they knew that the world was different. They laughed. They laughed. They thought that was funny. You know, they got it. You don't get to make the customers into something. The customers get to make you into something. And if you meet their needs, they'll stay with you.
What has been your impact other than in Russia from your book, which is, I understand, hundreds of thousands of copies have been sold.
Yeah, the first two versions have sold that much. My third version, this Ukrainian flag version, has it's just gone out. So we don't really know how it's going to go. But I suspect that if it goes as well as the first two versions, it should sell hundreds of thousands of copies. But one asking what work we've done that has had a difference. I'll tell you, just one of the big ones has been we've worked with Viking Cruises, not just on complaint handling, but with their whole customer service approach. They are now continuing to teach that process. And, you know, they just won both the best oceans and the best rivers. They're doing that. And I apologize for that doorbell just ringing. I think it's the U.S. Postal Service telling us we have a package. But yeah, so it had a big impact. And I also worked with AT&T years ago with just one group, and it was the group that handled customers who were calling in to stop their service. So these people were angry, as AT&T was asking them to change their phone lines, which was huge. I mean, that's, you know, when you're a business and you have to change everything around you for people to reach you, it's huge. And so we got an in-house trainer who went in, and she said these people were furious and I'm going to never, you know, how customers can get. And she said that she worked with them for a whole day and she never lost a single person. They all stayed with her. And that was by adopting this mindset of a complaint is a gift. And we encourage people to start with some sort of a statement of gratitude, whether you say, thanks for calling me. I didn't know. I want to help. It's hard to be angry when you're hearing words like that. You'd be stupid to be angry if you're hearing words like that, because the person is saying to you, we want to fix this. And that's what you want to. So she taught that little division. Well, it wasn't so little, it was 3,500 people, but 3,500 people around the United States to approach the complaint as a gift. It's a good thing for our company to get and they saved those companies. Imagine what that saves in money.
It saves,
yeah.
it takes so much money to get a customer
That's right.
that you never want to lose them.
That's right. And I think many companies, they're throwing money on the table and walking away from it. And that's just crazy. And little companies do it as well. I mean, it's not just the big ones. And when the little companies do it, those could be neighborhood customers, people who've known you for a long time, and it's very costly. Personally, I think good complaint handling is better than really, really good service handling. I do. Because the service handling, if they're really great and they do something for you, you're likely to forget it. But if you had a really big complaint and then they did something spectacular for you, and it doesn't have to be that they gave you things. It's not that. It's how they handled it. I'm having some new quartzite put in a counter in our kitchen, and they forgot to bring something out. So I talked with them this morning, and she said, we'll bring it out to you. Now, you know what that's worth? That says to me, they want to keep my business. That's what that says, that they stand by their product. And that's what a good complaint handler does.
I wanted to take just a moment of this and have you talk a little bit about something that I was not familiar with called the National Customer Rage Study.
Yes.
And I think the title might be very apt these days.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, those studies have been coming out for a while every year now. And so they're able to track the differences and they keep adding new complaints. Here's one really interesting statistic from the 2020 Rage study, and that is 34% of customers want an apology regardless. If you can do something or you can't do something, they still want an apology. And they don't want to, I'm sorry. They don't want that. As many times the complaint handler would say, I told you I was sorry. No, no, you didn't. You said some words, but you didn't say you were sorry. But 34% want an apology, 28% get one. Now, that's one quarter basically of the complaining pop. Yes, amazing, isn't it? Now, they may have gotten an apology and forgot about it. So when they reported to this study, but those numbers are low. But here's the interesting statistic in my mind. Of that 28%, when you ask them later, how satisfied were you with this company's business? It goes from 37%, I'm satisfied, up to 73%. Now, the difference between somebody who says they're satisfied at 37% rate or at the 73% rate, that's enormous. 73% rate, they're going to come back and give you another chance. So there's a lot of incredible goodies in that study. I actually quote them quite a bit because I'm not a researcher. I'm studying what other people have done and then feeding that back in a way that people can understand it. Because mostly these people are academic researchers. It's hard to read through some of their materials, but it's good material. It's
But
really
don't complain about it.
That's right. No, I'm glad. It gives me a market. It gives me a good market. Yeah. Yeah.
What would you like to add that we've not had a chance to talk about?
Well, I think it's, when I said that I really do think complaint handling is more important than service handling. If you think about it, the things you remember were when you had complaints and they didn't get handled well, or when there was an issue inside an organization and that didn't get handled well. That's what we remember. And people remember these things literally for decades. I mean, people tell me stories and then I ask them, when did this happen? And they say, well, that was 30 years ago. And here's the question. Do you think they've exaggerated in those 30 years? Because they've probably been telling that story for a long time. And for sure, if I tell you a story about negative complaint handling, you go, oh, well, then the next time I'm going to tell it even bigger. And pretty soon I've got a story that doesn't really reflect what the company was trying to do at all. And so companies to a certain degree are vulnerable when people get on Yelp or any of these other online platforms and start complaining. There's a good chance that they are exaggerating. They for sure are. So it becomes very important when we see somebody coming up to us to complain that we handle it in the best way possible. And that doesn't mean giving them what they want, but it means emotionally satisfying them, making them glad that somebody was listening to them, somebody was hearing them, and somebody treated their words as a real gift. That's the essence of it. It's worth so much in revenue for small and big companies.
Janelle, where can folks get in touch with you? It must have a website.
We do. It's the name of the book, www. A Complaint is a Gift. And if they go there and sign up, then we're doing various offers. In another week or so, we're doing an hour and a half power session. My partner and I, who did the workbook together, because we have a workbook as well. And you'll get invited if you reach out to me. And my email address is very simple, Janelle@janellebarlow.com. So I'm on the book, but A Complaint is a Gift is hard to forget. So if you just go there on the webpage, you'll find everything that you want. And I tell you, the more people who get this idea, Honestly, Doug, I believe when the first book that I wrote came out in the late 80s, and then the second edition in 2010, something like that. And now I kept thinking, pretty soon nobody will need this information because we'll all be such good complaint handlers. And that is not the case. It is simply not the case. We forget when we're in the customers yelling at us moment. And we forget these things, and we need constant regular reminder of how to treat customers, our most valuable asset besides our staff. Staff is a pretty big asset too.
You've been watching the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. Thanks for watching.